Hello, my name is Roshan Narayan, and thank you for joining us on In20. If you're watching us on YouTube, do
goals before the session. I was taking
whatever I gonna do,
Welcome back to the show. If you're joining us for the first time, do hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're watching us on the Rakyat Post, thank you so much for joining us. Steve Darby joins us all the way from Jolly Good, England. Steve, it's so good to see you again. And it's so good to hear from you because the last time we spoke was after our interview with Coach Sathia. You agreed with a lot of points he brought about, but there was something that irked you, and that was the reference to, and I don't mean any disrespect, white managers in Malaysia. Do you feel that was unjustified?
Yeah, well, firstly, greetings from Liverpool in England. So far, I'm not one of the 46,000 dead so far. I think obviously, Malaysia has done a fantastic job in the lockdowns compared to us, apparently, or all Southeast Asia has. Well done to them. Yeah, I mean, Sathia is a mate of mine. He's a good coach and a good bloke as well. But it just sometimes irks me that he can get away with saying a white man can't do this. But if I said a black man, a brown man, yellow man, whatever shade, I would be accused of being a racist right away. The Mat Saleh would be getting hammered. I've been called Farang, Mat Saleh, Angmo, also Guaylo. I've got all sorts of names accused at me. Some I know are abuse and racist, and I've been called a lot of racist names when we were losing in Perak and Kelantan. But that's football. Expect that. But in terms of the coaching, I actually don't think there's such a thing as a good foreign coach and a bad local. I think it's just coaching. I think you should get rid of the word foreign. It just should be the word coach. I think there's some great local coaches in Malaysia, Sathia, Raja Gopal, Mat Zanaris, Abdul Rahman. They were Wanyamak. They were all coaches who I respected highly, and I've always thought did a great job coaching. There's some bad foreigners as well. And basically what I'll say, I'll never say a bad coach's name because we've got enough enemies in the media and in the administration anyway. I don't need to make any more enemies. So, I'll always support someone positively. I'll never say he was a bad coach, but we all know there are some bad foreign coaches. And so it's not a foreign local comparison. It's a coach comparison, a good coach and a bad coach.
But I think where Coach Sathia was coming from was the fact that, a few people may have lied on their resume. Have you come across colleagues of you, such as, people in the past where they've lied, about their past? Have you ever been accused of that?
Absolutely. I mean, I usually call them flexible CVs because, it's amazing how many people have coached Barcelona's youth team because virtually every Spaniard out there has. There must be 9 million Spanish pro licenses out there. And every Brazilian CV you'll see a bloke with his arm around Pele or Zico. So there are some, flexible CVs, I'll say. And I mean, I had one bloke, a Brazilian, who, when I was technical director and national coach of Lao, wrote to me for a job. And he said to me he'd been coaching Australian's youth team. Just a blatant lie. I mean, and the good thing about the internet is you can check right away now. There's the internet, and there's also your connections, your mates. You can't lie anymore. It's stupid, to lie. You'll get found out eventually.
That's a fair point. But Steve, just going back to what you said, how difficult is it? Let's go away from the term foreigner, but for a coach to come, say, into a country like Malaysia or anywhere in Southeast Asia and try and install, thought processes that have been proven correct in Europe, somewhere over here in Malaysia, how difficult is that for you to get your message across?
Yeah, I see what you mean. The first thing the coach coming from abroad has to do is forget his colonial mentality. That's the first thing. You've got to get that out of your own head. You're not here because you are the great savior. You have to adapt to the culture of the country. And I mean, not only the culture, I mean the football culture as well. For example, I've heard coaches say, Malaysian teams should press like Liverpool do, gegenpress. You can't do it in the temperature and the humidity of Malaysia. You die. The lads would die. So you can't do things like that. But where I was very lucky, I had a manager, and that's a strange term that's quite unique to Malaysia in many ways. I had a manager when I was at Johor in '98 when I first came here, Haji Ahmed Mohammed. And he taught me like the secret recipe for a foreigner. And he says, be like bamboo. And I looked at him because there's not too much bamboo in Anfield and Liverpool where it came from. So I said, what do you mean? He says, bend a little bit. Bend a little bit that way. Don't snap. That might be like, for example, don't give in to your principles where you pick the team yourself. You're not going to get aligned into match fixing, but bend sometimes and realize, for example, my star striker, who was an international, rang me one day and said, I can't come training, coach. I've got to take my mum shopping. And it didn't matter how much I fined him, if I dropped him, which I didn't want to do anyway, because he was our star striker. His mum took preference over me. And that's a cultural difference I had to learn to adapt to.
That's a real eye opener. If ever I told that to my bosses that I didn't want to come to work because I had to go shopping, I think I would have been fired, rehired, and fired again.
Yeah, I mean, another example was one of my players, an Indian Malaysian lad, said to me, coach, here's an invitation to my wedding. I said, oh, thank you. I looked at the date. I said, you can't get married that day. We've got a big game on. And he said, I'm sorry, coach. I said, look, I know your future wife. She's smart. She wouldn't want you to miss a game either. He says, coach, I don't want to miss a game. It's nothing to do with me or my wife. It's to do with our parents. The numbers are right. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but it didn't matter. He was getting married that day, no matter what I said, no matter what he said. So we all went to his wedding at night time, all the players. We didn't go in the day because obviously we were playing.
That is an eye opener, but I understand where the numbers come in because it's a part of our culture.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that situation? Because I mean, here you are, your job is on the line. Because if you don't pick up points, if you don't get the best out of your players, you're fired. You're gone.
Well, yeah, I think, as you say, you have to adapt to the culture, the bamboo philosophy again. Good example was when I first went to work with Peter Reid in Thailand. The very first game, we were struggling a bit at half time, and he's walking down the tunnel. So I ran after him and grabbed him round the body and pulled him aside. I said, don't do it. He said, what do you mean? I said, I know what you're going to do. You're going to hammer. He's going to hammer Datacon, Tonglao, great player, but wasn't doing what we asked him to do. He said, yeah, I'm going to kill him. I said, get hold of him, take him to the side, get him in the toilets if you have to, but don't hammer a player in Thailand in front of his mates. I said, because suddenly he'll get a hamstring and 4 or 5 of his mates will get a hamstring as well, because face is so important in Thailand, a bit more than Malaysia. Face is a very big cultural issue I found in Thailand. Malaysia, I could hammer them in public if I had to. I mean, I want to say public, I mean the dressing room. And I will never hammer a player to the media or outside. I'll always defend my players. Because when you're a coach, you can be, I think, either a player's coach, which I hope I was or still am, or you can be a media coach or an administrator's coach who just do everything the media say or tells the media, the team before the players. I've had media abuse me in a number of countries because I will never tell my team before I tell the player, because no player should be told he's dropped in the press or on the TV or the radio. He should be told by his coach straight to his face and with the reason. So that's a cultural thing you have to sort of manipulate. So it's not all over Southeast Asia. Different things do apply. Though I say that, I mean, when I was at Perak, we had a fantastic dressing room. We never had a problem I worked it out one day, we had 7 religions and about 9 different languages were spoken. And there wasn't a problem. It was a true one Malaysia. The lads all got on together. Once they trained and played, religion was pushed aside, culture was pushed aside. They played football. And the dressing room is so important to getting success. Where I was very lucky in Singapore, I had 2 players, AD Iskander and Subramani, who dealt with anything in the dressing room for me. Never had a problem, never saw a problem. They just said, coach, leave it to me. And when no one was late, no one missed training, and that happened at Johor and at Perak, maybe a bit different in Kelantan, which if you want to talk about later, there was a few flexible things there happened in Kelantan.
Let's talk about that, since I mean it's all good thought processes and memories from these other places you manage. Let me structure it better. Was there any problems for you dealing with either certain players or the management when you were in Kelantan?
Yeah, Kelantan, I mean, as I said, I was very lucky to have a manager in Johor for 3 years, top class. In Perak, I didn't have a manager. It was even better. I had nobody. I had an administrator called Bobby, who was brilliant, and he just did what I asked him to do: book the planes. Though one day, as you probably read somewhere, I had to pay for the planes to Sabah for the whole club. But I had 4 presidents in the time I was at Perak. But I've got to be honest, all of them backed me to the hilt. I had the regions, Datuk Hamad Zahidi and Datuk Muhyiddin, all just said, Steve, you're the CEO on the pitch. We'll deal with the other problems off the pitch, the contracts and stuff. And they were great. So I had no manager, and that was wonderful to add. And the only problem I had was when the 4th president came along, and that was a big political story, which didn't go down very well, why I left. He was the MB, and he basically said to the players, you should be playing for the honour of Perak. So I went to see the MB, which I was told I shouldn't do, but I didn't really care because I was going anyway. And I said, well, look, I guarantee you all my players and myself will play for the honour if you MB for the honour. And I saw a few lads around him. They literally went white, never mind anybody else. And he said, that's different. I said, no, it's not different. These are professional people. If you want to find at the end of the season their contract's finished, get rid of them and get volunteers in, like you're asking for, amateurs. And you'll soon find the fans turn against you, not against the lads. But in terms of Kelantan, people always have a go at Tan Sri Anwar. He was okay. I had no problem with Tan Sri. He was honest. He was straight to my face. If he didn't agree with me, he told me. But he said, it's your decision in the end. Your head's on the block. And I had no problem with that. That's what I wanted. But there were certain elements within the management structure, I shall say, who were certainly going against me, I'll say. I mean, I'm lucky. I speak a little bit of Bahasa. Not fluent, but, thanks to P. Ramley and an excellent tutor in Kelantan as well, I could understand what was happening. And I had one day, I was bringing a sub on, and next minute, I had the manager say to the sub, don't go where he told you, play on this side of the pitch. So I had to hammer him in public because I did not want to lose my status in front of all the bench. And that player, the poor player, was petrified. Because the reality is, some of these management people, they'll be there forever. The players will be there forever. The Mat Saleh, the coach, he will not be there forever, no matter what. You're always going to leave. I had 2 blocks of 3 years in Malaysia, 3 years in Thailand. So that's almost like getting long service leave, 3 years, for a foreigner. And the most important thing I was taught was, besides being like bamboo, is you got to win. If you don't win, it doesn't matter what you do. Winning is political power for a coach. So if you've won 3 on a row, that's when you can talk to the management and say, look, we don't need to get a bus. We can get the plane if we can. Or can we have 20 more balls? Or can we have a spa session for the lads? And if you lose 3 in a row, you shut up. You say nothing. Because it's your job on the line anyway. So that's the reality of Asian football, that winning is the most important thing. Development is next week, and improving is winning by a bigger score next week. The only thing I think that's going to change now is what JDT have done. I think JDT have raised the bar magnificently. From what I had at Johor to what I see now, TMJ, he has put his money where his mouth is. He's employed good football people, again, both local and foreign, and the stuff, the infrastructure they're building, magnificent. I mean, I used to moan about the pitches we trained on. I mean, there was a classic example. In Johor, I'd only been there a couple of weeks, and we were training on the polo field. And I didn't know they belonged to the Sultan. And this bloke's riding a horse across my training field, and I was just about to tell him to go away in colloquial English. And Asmin Azeli, my captain, dived on me and planted my face in the mud. And I said, what are you doing? He said, you were going to tell him to go away, weren't you? And I said, yeah, of course I was. You don't drive a horse across my pitch. He said, that's a Sultan. It's his pitch. And if you said that, you wouldn't be coach tomorrow. You might not even be here tomorrow, coach. You'll be on the next plane out of here. So I learned culturally there as well. You don't abuse Sultans when they own the pitch.
That's good, but I mean, apart from the Sultan riding across his football field, you mentioned about tackling someone in management that was definitely trying to get you fired, because if he's told a player allegedly that don't listen to you, did you ever confront the person?
Oh, I always confront people straight to the face, one-to-one, because the only way to do it. And it was almost, you talk about the dressing room where I said it was great at Johor, great in Perak, the dressing room. We were all together. When we were at Kelantan, we weren't, because the management had a couple of players, a couple of foreigners on their side, and a couple of locals went with them. We almost had 3 or 4 different bubbles in the dressing room, and it was never going to work. And I even went to complain about one foreigner's behaviour, the way he was acting unprofessionally at training and just in terms of like punctuality and other things like that. And they backed the player. The manager backed the player, said I was wrong. And that's when I knew the writing was on the wall then, because he had the power, the management, and I didn't have the power. You could tell that. You were just basically there. I learned from, again, another mistake, which I learned probably the best one was in India. You should never go in as a coach after the management committee have picked the team, because you're stuck with their players, but you are stuck with their results.
But that applies to any manager anywhere in the world, right?
Oh yeah. You basically got to. If you're going to die on your feet. Don't live on your knees. It's when I went to India, I went to this big club, Mohammedan. They call themselves the Man United of Asia. And I saw the Man United of Asia's training pitch, singular, which had the biggest pile of cow dung on you've ever seen in your life. And I said, well, I don't think they do that at Carrington and Old Trafford's training centre. But I got there, it was 35 players. And after a week or so, I said, look, these are some lovely lads. They're trying their best, but they're not good enough to be professional footballers. Turned out they belonged to nephews, sponsors. And to be fair to them, it was mentioned to me very simply, if we didn't employ them, if I didn't sack them, they would have no income. They'd be on the poverty line. So I said, okay, I understand, I respect that attitude in a sense. So in turn, we did employ them, but they certainly weren't, the best. And the foreigner, again, there was a star foreigner, grossly overpaid, though apparently later, again, to use your term, allegedly, some of his salary coming back to members of the committee. So they were giving him a huge salary and a percentage was going back. Now, apparently, that was happening in Malaysia recently. Is it The Secret Footballer I read somewhere? That's in Malaysia, said that's happening, that coaches take a percentage of the player's wage. It does happen. Sadly, it does happen. When I first went to Perak, one of my foreigners, Kita Manju, came to me and said, Coach, how much do I give you, to play? I said, I said, you score goals. That's all you do for me. And he was delighted because he'd been previously given a percentage of his salary back to a person in the management. That's where, again, if you have ethics or values, you have to live by them, I think. And I'm not going to cheat. Most coaches don't do that, but there are some, sadly, who will take the percentage.
Steve, once again, those stories are unbelievable. I had so many more questions, but the problem with this show is it's only 20 minutes. I think once, people have watched this, there will be questions. Hopefully, God willingly, no lawsuits and we don't get shut down. But would you be willing to come back and talk about a few more things on the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Basically, I'll try and tell the truth. I will never name people unless I got proof of things. That's where, have you ever talked about match fixing? We all know what goes on, but we can't name names because we cannot legally prove who's fixing what. And we all know in the game in Malaysia, I know, Sathia knows, Abdul Rahman knows, we all know what's happening, but we can't say it. And it's sad because match fixing is the biggest cancer in the game. It's probably worse in Vietnam. That's probably the worst country I've seen of it. Vietnam and Laos. It was appalling in those nations. Malaysia, I think, is getting better. But if anyone says it's not going on, they've been taking their naive pills.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and opinions, Steve Darby. We will have you back very soon if the show still exists. Take care, my friend. And be safe, please. You and your daughter, please be safe over there in England with whatever's going on. All right, thanks for watching the show. And if you do want to catch all the highlights or just watch the entire 20 minutes of Steve Darby, head over to our YouTube channel or find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Till the next time, God willingly, there's a next time. I'm Roshan Narayan.